Welcome back, Patriots, to another unapologetic episode of Red, Rights, and You, the show where we cut through the noise, call out the lies, and expose the chaos the radical left is unleashing on our country. I'm your host, Tim Andrews, and tonight we're tackling the disturbing rise in violence and shootings carried out by the lunatic left. Their version of tolerance always seems to come with a side of broken windows, burning cities, and now bullets. And speaking of lunatics, disgraced former FBI director James Comey is back in the spotlight, charged with making false statements and obstruction of justice from his Senate testimony nearly 5 years ago. Looks like the swamp may finally be turning on itself. Of course, I never march into battle alone. With me, as always, is my remarkable co-host, Mark Mosgrove, who can spot Democrat corruption faster than Joe Biden can lose his place on a teleprompter. And helping us navigate the murky waters of dirty Democrat politics tonight is a sharp young businessman and entrepreneur who's run for office and remains deeply involved in shaping the conservative movement locally, Adam Esker. And now, Patriots, we have a very special guest, someone who's not only been on the political front lines, but has also worked in one of the most important fights of our time, protecting the health of our children. Until recently, he worked closely with U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy Jr., on the MAHA Initiative, a project that has shed light on a shocking possibility that the dramatic rise in autism cases we've seen in recent years may be linked to something as common as acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, and countless other household pain relievers. Big Pharma doesn't want you to hear it. The mainstream media won't touch it, but leaders like our guest have had the courage to confront it head on. And that's just part of his story. He's also worked alongside Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, is a proud 2011 graduate of Cloverleaf High School, and a familiar voice from WTAM Radio in Cleveland. And he has just been appointed as the executive director of the Medina County Republican Party. Patriots, let's give a big, warm Red, Rights, and You welcome to a rising Republican voice, a fighter for truth and living proof that not every young American is out spray painting statues and burning down Starbucks. Jake Underwood. Jake, welcome.
Wow, that's an incredible introduction. Thank you so much.
Well, let's start right there with, you've worked directly with Bobby Kennedy Jr. and the MAHA Initiative. Tell our audience what you discovered about the Tylenol autism and why this issue should matter to every single American family.
Well, yeah, so what we discovered, so the best thing about Secretary Kennedy and working with him is that because he doesn't come from that science and like medical background, he's going to look places that people don't normally look. And he, along with the people at the FDA and the CDC and some different organizations, they started looking at the different studies, and they found a significant link between Tylenol and, patterns of ADHD, autism, and a lot of these other, diseases that have really been on the rise the last 30 years that we really didn't see too much of before all these things really became mainstream. And through different studies, I think it was 46 different studies, don't quote me on that, but 46 different studies showed a significant link between this acetaminophen and autism and ADHD. And so, and now I know President Trump came out and he said, don't take Tylenol. And obviously that's the best way to go about it. But by all means, if you're in pain and there's nothing else that's going to help, then yeah, take Tylenol, but don't overdo it. Don't do it for a social media trend, then end up in the hospital and then, wonder why your healthcare bills are insanely high. That's not Bobby Kennedy's fault. That's your fault. The risks. And now they're going to try to put a warning label just saying, if you take this while you're pregnant, these could be some of the side effects.
It's a story that hits very close to home for me because my second oldest boy, he's autistic, nonverbal, and we actually had him vaccinated with the MMR vaccine. And he had even been saying a couple of words, was, pretty advanced, actually. He was a little less than 18 months. I can't remember the exact age, but had him vaccinated, and we brought him home, and just a few hours later, he was just a blank slate. So people that argue that vaccines don't have any effect. Now, I'm not saying there aren't other mitigating factors and contributing, issues. My ex-wife had Bell's palsy when she was pregnant, and so I think that may have something to do with it. But the numbers are staggering. I mean, they're talking about like 1 in 16 boys now, or something like that. So you can't tell me that it's just a coincidence. And by the way, they had a class action lawsuit against these big pharma companies. They said that all these families were going to be able to benefit from that because it's ruining lives out there. And before you know it, it disappeared. So my guess, you're more familiar with politics than I am. Adam, you are as well. But my guess is they called in a favor. Those guys can hand out millions of dollars like it's a $5 bill. But when you get into millions of dollars per family, and it's 1 out of every 12, or maybe it was 30 or 60 back then, now it's time to call the congressman or the senator and say, remember that campaign pledge? Remember that money? I think I need to call in a favor here. So that disappeared. But boy, I felt terrible about it. And I feel even more terrible when I tell people about it. It's my own son. They still don't believe me. They think I'm making it up. And I tell them, that was your boy. And Adam, Brandon. You've seen Brandon before. He's nonverbal still to this day. He's 31 years old. And if that were your son, you would certainly understand it. And I've had doctors tell me that it's the preservative that they use in the vaccines is mercury derivative. And that has been the whole problem. They were still using it until it was done. Then they were going to replace it. So that's what I have to say about that issue. It really hit me hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, Tim, so just like yourself, it hits home for me. My uncle has severe autism. He's almost nonverbal. I think he's about 60 years old, and I've known him my entire life. One of the nicest, kindest humans ever. And what has bothered me recently is I've seen all these people that are posting on social media, Orange Man bad, and hands off our kids, and autism. We still love you, and nobody ever said that we don't love those people. They are still human beings. They're part of our family. We're just, Bobby Kennedy and Trump and others are trying to understand why have the numbers gone through the roof over the last 30 years. So I actually got into it a little bit on Facebook. I probably should have stayed away the other day. Someone said, my aunt has autism and she's still a human and we should all love her. And I said, well, of course we love these people. They're, we're not, nobody said that at all. We're just trying to understand what's going on.
It's actually, Mark, go ahead.
It's actually because we love our family that we're concerned about this. I mean, this is not a winning issue. This is not an issue that the president thinks, oh, if I come out that acetaminophen's bad or anything like that, that's suddenly going to change the country. I mean, this is kind of like an issue that it's important, but it's not like a winning issue. So there has to be something to it. Otherwise, why would they be bringing it up? I mean, I haven't seen the studies or anything like that. And that's what doctors are saying. Some doctors are saying, oh, well, it's bogus science or whatever. Does anybody know if the science has been released on this?
I would have to guess that they're going to put together, I would look for the next Maha report, and more than likely Bobby's going to release it then. That's usually how they like to do it. A lot of the stuff that they've talked about in the past. So I think the next one comes out at the end of October, early November. They would probably have a lot of the links to the studies there. Okay. But yet, Tim, to kind of go back to with the numbers, back in the 60s, it was 1 in 10,000 had autism. And in California now, it's 1 in 12 boys. And in the country, it's 1 in 21. Those are the updated statistics. And, 5 years ago, I mean, I got furloughed during it. I don't know about you guys, but we weren't allowed to question science. We weren't allowed to say anything. We had to do what we were told or show us your papers. And if you questioned that, you were considered somebody who was going to kill grandma And then you couldn't enter the raffle for tax dollars that our governor put on in Ohio because, he does such a great job. And you weren't allowed to question anything. You weren't allowed to do that. And now when you do question it, now it's the right thing to do. Now they encourage you not to listen. When 5 years ago we were literally told it was life or death, and if we didn't listen, I believe Amy Acton said it was going to be 100,000 people every 2 weeks were going to end up getting COVID. We saw how that turned out. It's just it goes back to this is what I used to tell people, because one of my jobs with Maha was I would have to get the organizations together that couldn't agree on 10% of things, and that's what they wanted to sit there and fight with each other about. It's not left or right, it's correct. We need to make America healthy again. This isn't a political issue. We need to make sure that people's food is healthy. We need to make sure that we get chemicals out of food. We need to make sure that we figure out what is going on and not just treat diseases. We need to cure them. And we've gotten so used to just treating things and just kicking the can down the road, which Congress loves to do that with budget bills and everything else. Just kick the can down the road. 15 years, they'll figure it out. We can't do it with health, though. And we're seeing, we are the sickest nation in the world. And we have to start questioning the things that we were told weren't a problem, because that's where we're going to start seeing where the mistakes were made. And we could probably get to the root cause of 90% of the things health-wise if we just go back and look at the science with an open mind.
Amen. Now, Jake, just to clarify, I want to make sure I'm not confused on the issue. Are you suggesting that hypocrisy exists in government?
Yeah, that's the rumor.
It must have just started happening, because it's never happened before.
Unbelievable.
It was when Secretary Kennedy got in. That's when it all started.
Everything is fine.
And that's the thing, guys. Like, if this had been 2 years ago where they had come out and said, hey, we have all these studies, there's all this data saying that there is a risk when you are taking Tylenol or whatever the drug is, or whatever the environmental factor is, everybody would have been like, oh my gosh, this is breathtaking, groundbreaking. Now we understand what's going on. And because it came out under the Trump administration, I mean, I'm just going to say it. These people have Trump derangement syndrome. So, he could come out and say, hey, listen, anything, I've cured cancer, and they talk about that, and people would be like, holding up the signs, I fight for cancer is my right, and all that. It's like, this is an issue that none of us should be upset about. I mean, this came from Harvard, right? That's where that big study came from. And I just don't understand.
It's something I'd like to ask Secretary Kennedy, but since we don't have him on the podcast today, I'll ask you, Jake. You've been with him ever since his run for the presidency as a Democrat. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. July of 23 is when I left WTAM and I teamed up with Team Kennedy at the time.
Tell us all a little bit about how that transition was, going from, a staunch, you had to play the party politics as a Democrat, and making that transition over to the Republican Party. I guess it's still not, he's still a Democrat technically, but making that transition over to the Trump administration and supporting him in that role. How did that work?
So I was brought on, when I was first brought on, I was brought on as an advisor and as on-the-road personal assistant. And I was brought on by the then campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich.
Oh, that's the
asked
connection.
me. Like, he basically told me, your job is to balance out policy, because everyone that is with him is left-leaning, and Dennis was really the only one that was leaning more towards the right. And Bobby himself is very, I wouldn't even say he's a Democrat. That's the strangest thing. He's more libertarian. Really get down to the nitty-gritty of it. But, there were times where, Secretary Kennedy and I would be, we're eating dinner, and he starts talking about things, like I specifically, like, I'm trying to think of things without getting in trouble because I had to sign an NDA. But, like
we won't tell anybody, Jake.
Talk about your other friend, Bobby. Wink, wink.
That's right.
Yeah.
But, there was one time that abortion was brought up. And he starts talking about it, and he's like, I don't even know why people are worried about it. It's a state right. And why are they asking me? Like, it's a part of the state. If they don't like it, then they need to call their local representative and have them change the law. And I'm like, are you sure you're a Democrat? Because, you know, you don't really sound like a Democrat, Bobby. I'm like, I don't know, man. You know, I'm like, that sounds real conservative to me. And he's like, no, I'm sorry. I do. When I talk like him, sometimes I do an impersonation. I'm not doing it to make fun of him because I just pop into the voice. And he'd be like, no, I'm a Democrat, I swear. And I'm like, okay, Bobby, you know, whatever you say, man. But he was very libertarian. And it's funny because everyone was like really nervous when we went to that Turning Point event to endorse Trump. Because that was Charlie Kirk, 100%. If you want an example of what Charlie Kirk believed, it was that. That was the perfect example of it. A Kennedy walking out on a stage in front of 30,000 Republicans, chanting his name and endorsing the guy who's running for president as the front-running Republican. That is right there is what Charlie stood for, because it started with discussion. It started with being able to listen to one another. And that I'm so happy, considering everything that happened to Charlie, that's the big thing that happened, because I'm sure Trump would have won, but I don't know that there's the positivity and the patience that people have with President Trump, because we expected Trump to come in right away and start doing things. For the most part, he has. But I think the fact that people like Tulsi Gabbard came out in support of President Trump, and, you know, Bobby Kennedy did it, and they had the Reclaim America tour and all these different things that they did, it really bought him some time, because they're going, you know, I think the voters looking at it and they're able to really break it down and go, okay, this is something that's kind of new. We've never seen this before, where we actually have people from different sides coming together and going, what can we do? What is it that we can agree on and fix? And that's what we saw with that Turning Point event. So I'm so glad that Charlie was able to do that. But it was the end of July of 23. We're backstage at a Hannity event. This is when Bobby was still running as a Democrat. And our communications director, Del Bigtree, is backstage, and he goes, well, what do you think? I go, we got to team up with Trump somehow. I don't know. I mean, you know, if we convince him to be Bobby's VP or convince Bobby to be his VP, I'm like, either one of them would be the greatest vice president of all time. And he's like, that's never going to happen. You're crazy to think that. So the day of, because I was in charge of his live streams too. So any of the live streams you saw online, including the speech that he gave when he dropped out, I was behind the scenes, you know, flipping pulling the buttons and, you know, pulling the strings and all that different stuff. But afterwards, everybody's kind of like sad. And I got this giant smile on my face, and Del Bigtree comes over to me. He's like, you're probably the only one who's not upset. I'm like, dude, you don't understand what's about to happen. Like, you're going to have a stadium full of people chanting Bobby's name. And considering everything he's been through, with the Democratic Party dragging him through the mud, with members of his own family dragging him through the mud, the DNC went out of their way after we would get on a ballot to sue us to get us off the ballot. And it was Republicans and their lawyers that were helping us stay on the ballot as an independent, because they're going, look, we obviously we don't want you taking votes from us. We don't necessarily agree with where you stand, but we agree that you should have the right to run. And that's like that. It was really cool. And you started seeing that unity and everything come together. And the fact that it happened at a Turning Point event was just incredible.
That's awesome. Mark, you had a comment, question?
That's amazing. But I got to ask it now while I have a chance. Every time I see Bobby Kennedy and I see his wife, Cheryl Hines, who is a Hollywood actress, I just wonder what they talk about at dinner time. Can you help out on that thought?
Well, they talk about everything. That's the really cool thing, is that, you know, yeah, Cheryl's a Hollywood actress, and she's really successful and very funny, but she's also very down to earth. Mm-hmm. Like the first time I met, I didn't know what to talk with her about, and I'm like, being like, you know, an assistant, I'm helping him, you know, pack some clothes up, and we're getting suitcases ready. And the movie that I remember her in was RV with Robin Williams.
Yes.
And at the end, she's yodeling with Kristen Chenoweth, who, you know, is known for being the singer that she is. And so we're standing there, and in my head, I'm like, I really want to ask her this, but I don't know. The first question I'm going to ask her is this. Okay. And I go, can I ask you something? She's like, yeah, sure. What's up? And, she's probably thinking it's about what bag does this go in or, and I go, in the credits of RV, was that you yodeling? And she's like, what? I'm like, was that you? Like, was that your real voice? Yeah. And I go, wow. All right. Well, you held your own. And she's like, yeah, I think I did all right. I'm like, no, considering who you were singing with, like, yeah, no, it was great. And she's just so down to earth like that. And so is Bobby. So, I mean, they get along so well. And if you ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, that entire show's it's improv, right? So, when she goes, Larry, she does the same thing to Bobby, but she'll say Bobby. And so, like he'll be talking about something and she'll do like the Bobby. It is honestly in the moment, it's so hard not to laugh because then, you're thinking of Curb Your Enthusiasm, but it's, instead it's Bobby Kennedy and Cheryl Hines. And no, they both are very sweet people and very kind. And I am very lucky to know them as well as I do. And they are the real deal. What you hope Hollywood people and famous people are like, they are like that. They are down to earth and very nice.
I know that you were not only co-worker, but you were friends with Charlie Kirk. God bless his soul and his family. Tell us a little bit about your role there and a little something maybe we don't hear every day on mainstream media about Charlie Kirk.
My role with Turning Point was through Maha. So we formed Maha Action, which has since went under some changes at the top. And we based that on Turning Point Action. And so for the first, I got to think, 3-4 months, we were working hand in hand with Turning Point, watching what they were doing, how they were doing it. And I got the chance to work with Charlie a few times during that. And he was, he was so kind, and he wanted. Now, and don't confuse kind for like pushover, because I think that's the problem with Charlie. People are, when he's debating someone, they expect kind to be like, well, that is a great opinion. Thank you so much for sharing. Next. Like, no, let's have a little, let's have a little discussion. And Charlie was always about that. And he was genuine. He really was, because I was nervous. I was nervous to meet him because I had seen his stuff online. I had been a fan of Turning Point, and I'm like, man, I really hope he's not a D-bag. Like, I want him to be the same guy that I see sitting on campuses. And when you meet him and you start talking to him, and and in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm waiting for the act to drop. I'm waiting for it, because like he seems just as cool. He wants to listen. He wants to, because I'm the same way. Like, I used to get a lot of flack when I would host on the radio station, because I would tell them, look, I'm a Republican, but on a lot of things I'm independent, and I'm open to hearing different facts, because if I'm wrong, I don't want to regurgitate wrong information. So tell me, if there's a study that's out and I don't know about it, and I'm sitting here saying something that's wrong, I want to know. I don't want to be misinformed. And he had that same approach, and a lot of people don't anymore. We go on social media and we only follow the people that we want to hear from, and we create these little echo chambers, and you only hear half of the good things that happen, but you hear all of the bad, or vice versa. All you hear is all of the good and you don't hear any of the bad. And Charlie, he was so genuine, and to actually want to, he was genuine both in person and in his love for Christ. That's not an act, because I've seen some things online saying that he wasn't genuine in his faith, and he was. He lived it. He breathed it. Like, for him, I heard this analogy years ago, and I try to live up to this with my faith and living by Christ. But they say, your faith in Christ is like a jacket. If you only have one sleeve on, it's not really going to do anything. That guy not only had a coat, he had a sweater, then he had a hoodie over that, and he had like the boots, and like he was in a full suit, and he was the real deal. He really was. And it still hasn't set into me to the point, I listened to Bob France. I'm sitting there at the headquarters, and I have Bob France on, and I hear, them say Charlie Kirk, and Bob's producer Seth Williams I worked with at TAM. So in my head I'm going, oh wow, Seth got Charlie Kirk for Bob. That's a good get. All right, and that's what my mind would jump to, and then I remember, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, no, that's no, he's really gone, and it's I hope, because he was already doing it with Turning Point, and the craziest things, you're going to have all these people saying that he was all these terrible things and the racist and a bigot, the word vomit that they throw out there on people they don't like. But it's causing people to watch his clips now. And when they actually are able to sit there and they listen to him, and when there is a they, them, whatever, with purple hair and a mohawk and whatever they have going on, and they're in front of him, and Charlie goes, okay, well, what do you think? And they see that, when they walk up to the mic and the crowd's booing, Charlie's going, no, 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 we don't boo. Don't boo. We want to listen to them. Come on, let's give them a chance. They're going to see that, and they won't admit it, but they're going to know how wrong they were. And that's going to make them even more upset, because they know they killed the wrong one. That's the thing. Like, of all the people, like, there's a lot of, and I'm, nobody should die. Nobody should die like that. But like, of all the people to do that to, he wasn't the one. There's a lot of bad people out there. Charlie was not one of them. That's. But yeah, I'm rambling, but but he
All good stuff.
he was just so genuine. He really was, and he made it so that people could talk, and that was really the best thing about all of it.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, he's been martyred, and now it's growing like it's never grown before, and people are eager to speak at campuses. And I heard someone speak, though. Oh boy, I can't remember her. She used to be anti-Trump, and now she's pretty conservative. But she was speaking at a Turning Point event, and they're trying to fight the fight, but nobody could do it like Charlie Kirk. That's the sad part, I mean, they're working it, they're fighting, but there's only going to ever be one Charlie Kirk.
Well, Megyn Kelly, I just saw
that's
right
who it was.
The podcast. Megyn Kelly was out there, and she was kind of playing that persona. So I think we're going to have plenty of people that are going to pick it up, but it may not be so big like Charlie Kirk, but it might be on the local level. It might be smaller all around the country, different groups, and that actually is more effective overall, I think, when it's a movement of a bunch of people across the country doing the same sort of thing.
And Adam, what about you? I mean, you're in that age group. How did that affect you? Do you know folks your age? Have you discussed it with other?
Yeah, I mean, it was horrible. I was sitting right here actually when it happened, and I've followed Charlie. Now, I never got the chance to meet him like Jake. I'm very envious and jealous of you, but I've followed him for a long time, years. I've known about him, and it was actually really telling when I picked up my son. So my son's 14, and I picked him up from football that evening, and I said, "Did you hear what happened today?" And he said, "Yeah, I heard Charlie got shot and he's dead." And I said, you knew about him? Because I don't think I'd ever spoken to my son Jaden about Charlie. And he goes, "Dad, everybody knew about him. Everybody likes him. That's all that." And he goes to an all boys school, St. Ignatius in Cleveland. And he goes, "Everybody followed him." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He goes, everybody liked him. So that really struck me, because I was like, oh my God, these kids were following him, and they thought it was cool, and they were getting what they wouldn't get almost anywhere else, the straight shooting truth and the discussions, but also the value of listening to people that don't have your same beliefs and having real discussions with them, instead of just either side calling them a, whatever name you want to call them, basket of deplorables, a racist, whatever you want to call them. So I was just really devastated. I'm waiting on a Charlie Kirk flag to come. So we have a big Halloween party every year, and we're going to have a toast to Charlie at our party this year. So I'm really excited about that. God, I hope that someone can pick up that stick at that and run with it, though. The numbers showed for themselves what he was able to do. It was absolutely staggering. to get mostly young men. It was a lot of boys that followed him, but he actually was. I mean, and I agree with you, Jake. I think Trump would have won, but I think for just setting the tone for the future, he made such an impact. It was absolutely incredible. So, I know Erica, his wife, Megyn Kelly, and others are going to try to do the same thing with younger girls, which God bless them. I hope that they do because they need more help, I think, than almost anybody else. But back to your question, Tim, I mean, when I was sitting here, I had 4 or 5 people call me and say, "Did you hear what happened?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you listened to him too?" People that I've known and friends of mine or family members that I've known for years, but we never really, talked about Charlie specifically. I had people calling. My phone was blowing up all afternoon. So it was, it was definitely a moment that I'll never forget. But I think Jake's right. I mean, I would never wish death on anybody, but Charlie, I mean, like of all the people in the world, that's who they went. I mean, that's who, but if you think about it from their perspective, I mean, he was super dangerous, right? But that's the sad thing is now someone has to take that baton and run with it.
1 second, Mark, real quick. But I think it's so important that somebody that makes that impression on young people, because the young people, that's our future, right? That's going forward. They're going to shape the whole future of this country. But I really wish there were people that would go out and do the same thing Charlie did on campuses with older folks too, because, Mark and I, you guys have a lot of knowledge about politics that Mark and I don't have. But one thing we can tell you is back in the day when we were your age and maybe even a little younger, it wasn't Republican, Democrat. You voted for the person that you felt would best lead this country. Well, I'm normally Republican, but I'm going to vote for this guy, or I'm normally Democrat, but I'm going to vote for this guy. So I just wish there was somebody that could get out there. It starts with the youth. I think they're the most impressionable. It's very, very important. But I think it's important for the whole population, for everybody. Somebody's got to do something to get this country back together, at least not at each other's throats. So there's not some kind of a civil war. I mean, you used to joke about it, but it's becoming more and more a possibility as these parties are becoming more and more polarized, and all this violence that's breaking out on the left.
Adam, you used the word dangerous, talking about Charlie Kirk was dangerous. And my wife and I talked about this quite a bit. I think he had a big mark on him that, unfortunately, this person assassinated him. But there are people in this country that wanted Charlie Kirk to fail, to flop. I think that if this had not happened, you would have had people going after, looking at their books and this and that, just trying to find something to tarnish this man. And it's just disgusting. It just really is.
And I agree with you, Mark. I mean, if you look at it from their perspective, though, I'm trying to okay, why would you want someone dead? Because you're threatened, you're afraid of him. Because when you lose control of the narrative, like they have been, you'll stop at absolutely nothing. I mean, look, they tried to shoot Trump twice as well. It's not the last that we're going to see of it. I mean, sadly, there will be more. Unfortunately, it is because these people on both sides, but mainly on the left, have been told over and over. And actually, Elon Musk tweeted it out, and I retweeted it. It was a child in front of a screen with the media screaming, "They're Nazis," and then the kid goes to school, and the teachers, "They're Nazis," and then it's Nazi, fascist. Which, by the way, these people don't even know what that means.
Exactly.
Their record of history goes back to 1939. If I would imagine that most people wouldn't even be able to tell you when World War II was. But anyways, that's a different point. And so people are like, how could this happen? Well, when you're told, Kamala Harris has repeatedly said Hitler. You have these mainstream media outlets every day comparing them to fascism, Nazi. You have the Time magazine with his face with the mustache, and then you're like, how could this possibly happen? Well, when you tell kids, especially younger people, that someone is a horrible equates them to one of the worst people in history, and then you wonder why they went out and they shot them. Well, because they feel like they were doing the right thing. So when you just are constantly for years fed this garbage and this, if someone doesn't agree with you, they are a racist, a sexist, a misogynist, a homophobe. I mean, blah, 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 blah. It's no wonder why these things happen, because these people truly, their brains are broken. And so, people that are hard to think for themselves and just follow along, when they're fed this information for years, this is what happens. And how
Yeah,
do you
Mark.
stop that?
Mark and I were just talking about the word fascist. How most people, I'll bet you 8 out of 10, you could put a microphone into those people that are holding the Trump as a fascist sign and walk up and down and ask them what a fascist is. 8 out of 10 of them wouldn't know. And you know what's even sadder? I would bet you that half of the people in Congress and Senate that are calling them a fascist, they probably don't even know what it means. It's just another one of those trigger words that the left uses, fascist, Nazi, all these things that they want to label people, and it incites violence. So,
yeah, when it comes down to it, I mean, I've talked about this with a lot of people. Really, like 95% of us are very much like, have the same values, the same, we want to be left alone. We might disagree a little bit about taxes, or we might disagree a little bit about like unions or something like that. But, like my grandfather was a blue collar Democrat. He worked in the union, but they all agreed, like back then, you mentioned like 90% of people agreed on everything. It was just a few issues that they would, hey, I'm going to vote for the left, or I'm going to vote for the right here. But it was always, who's the best person to lead the country? Who's the best person for me? Now it's like, those people are horrible. They're Hitler. They're evil. They're communists. They're this. They're that. And you have that continual that underlying hatred, and it's just getting worse.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mark.
I've got a question for all three of you guys, but we'll start with Jake. Greg Gutfeld on Fox yesterday referenced Charles Krauthammer, and I don't know if you younglings know who he was, but he used to be on Fox. He passed away in 2018. Look him up if you don't know him. He said that conservatives think liberals are stupid. Liberals think conservatives are evil. What do you think about that? We'll start with Jake. I know it's generalities.
Yeah, I just, yeah, I don't know. I think about my time in high school, and how, because I mean, I was in high school during the Obama years, and that was, I would, was he elected? 08 is when he took office. So I was in
09.
I was a freshman. Well, yeah, I was like a freshman or sophomore, and I just remember how it started then with the Republicans are evil. The Republicans are this and this and this and this and this. And looking back now, it's really ironic that a bunch of people who tell you that God don't exist are willing to sit here and tell you who's evil and who's not. I think that's interesting. But, what do I know?
I love it.
So,
I love it.
And it's, I think, and traveling around the country with Bobby, it really set in. And, Adam spoke about it too. We agree on 70% of things. And it's these little culture issues that get in the way. Like things like abortion or, the trans stuff. And yes, those are important things. But I don't know. I think of it completely different. And when I put it in the context I'm about to put it into, people that I know on both sides, they're like, yeah, I guess it really doesn't matter. I go, how does where that person goes to the bathroom affect how you pay your rent? Are you able to get a house because they could go to the bathroom? Does it lower interest rates? Are you able to take care of the things that you need to take care of? No, then I don't care. I don't care about it. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm concerned about the money we're giving to other countries when we have people who can't buy homes here. I'm worried about the money that we're spending in wars in other countries when we have people who can't afford groceries. There was a statistic came out 2 years ago. 55% of the people in this country cannot get their hands on $1,000 if they needed it tomorrow. That's an issue. That's a problem. And that's something that statistically 55% of people can agree on. And I bet even the people that could do it, they're not in a good position. No one is. So for us to sit here and want to rip each other apart about just stupid little stuff, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's dumb. I mean, it's the crazy. We have a bunch of millionaires who work one day a week on Sunday. And if you're a fan of the ones in Cleveland, like I am, they lose 70% of the time, but they're going to tell me how I can and cannot be a good person. Like you guys get popped going 130 on 71 twice a year. And those are the ones that the media get a hold of. I don't want to hear it from you anymore. Yeah, the left loves to grandstand, and there are some people on the right that like to do it too. But for the most part, even the people on the right, when they do it, we're like, shut up. Like, go sit down. Nobody wants to hear from you. But these people, they like to grandstand, and they like to act like they're greater than you. And, they are just, because of where they went to college or what the piece of paper with their name on it says they can be. That's not what you are. It's what you can be. And it's just all those little things. It's like little roots digging into cement, and it's just slowly separating us. Where we agree on 70% of the big things, and I don't understand why we can't just focus on that. And eventually, it's got to click for a candidate. Somebody's got to run on the platform of, hey, none of us can afford bills. If you're under the age of 35, good luck getting a house.
Yes.
Best of luck to you. Really, like, good luck. If you don't come from a good family, or if you didn't get into a great situation, if you weren't good with finances, I'm one of them. When you were younger, you're probably not gonna own a house. So when are we gonna start focusing on those things, as opposed to, well, you're evil because of this, and well, you're a bad person because of this. We all just want to live our lives. We all just want to pay our bills. We want to be able to relax, go on vacation. That's it. That's what we want out of life. And we're doing, all we hear, television, social media, that echo chamber, like I said earlier, all we hear from that is that the people that don't agree with us are evil. And we have that on both sides. And it is an issue, because as a Republican, I want people to think my way. You don't have to, but I want you to, or I at least want you to be open to it. And until we all kind of have that mindset, we're just going to be stuck. I think it's ironic that people who don't believe in God are going to tell us who is and isn't evil.
That is a great quote. I don't know if you came up with that or you saw it, but that should be on a bumper sticker or a meme or something. Because it is so true. It is so true.
That was just right off the top of the head, because I've thought that for a while. I mean, that's crazy.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for a long time. I think it's ironic that people who can't tell you anything about God, but they'll tell you what is and is not evil. Come on. That's crazy.
That's just brilliant. I wish I would have came up with that. Let me ask you real quick, Jake, my last question, and then I'll shut up, and I know we're running out of time. I was impressed with Charlie Kirk, how he could talk. He talked so fast and so direct. And I always thought he must stay up at night and look at the ceiling and come up with the scenarios of what to say, but probably not. I have a feeling his brain just worked that quick. Did he talk that fast, like when he was going to order off the menu? Or, I mean, was he always just so that way, or what, did you see a different side?
I think it's one of those, like, the adrenaline starts pumping. I mean, when you got him talking about stuff, like, if he was planning out, when we would ask him, well, how do you think we should do this? Then you would hear if you do A and B, that's going to lead to C, and C leads to D, but when it was just like talking, he was very relaxed. Like, he definitely, he could turn his mind, which I am so envious of this, because having been in, like, campaign, and then campaign mode, and then legislation mode, and then party mode, I don't turn my brain off. Like, there are some nights I get maybe 2 hours of sleep, and it's just routine at this point. But I know, like, for him, Saturday night, phone's in a drawer, he's not touching it. All day Sunday, it's him, Erica, and the kids.
Wow.
I envy that, and I have to get better at that. But he knew when he could turn it on, and his brain, I mean, he was just, I heard that all he did was read. He was a big fan of just sitting down and reading a book and just trying to get as much knowledge as he can. And I have 5 books in front of me. So I'm trying to pick up on that. I don't have the attention span to do that. I'm one of those audiobook guys. I got to hear it and then it's going to click. I don't know if I could read it. My reading comprehension is not great. And you could tell by my test scores from high school that was the case. It's not good. But yeah, he was so smart, and he was able, I'm pretty sure he had like a photographic memory. So you could just look at it and then he could pull it up, and his brain worked like a supercomputer.
I always wait for the movie, Jake.
Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead, Adam.
Regarding your question,
Yeah.
about Charles Krauthammer's quote, I think that he's probably correct. But why? And so again, I've been trying to think about it deeper. Like, why do we think like that? Both sides, and I think it just comes down to the media, and it's really scary and sad because, like for instance, this week, right now, I'm picking an issue, but when Google and YouTube just came out and admitted under oath that yes, they were pressured by the Biden administration to censor, remove content that they didn't like. That would be, if you looked up the definition of fascism, Tim, that would be something that would be right there. Government pressuring private enterprise to do something that they want them to do or not want them to do. But when you Google YouTube or Google or news of the week, I did it this morning. It doesn't pop up. There's a few stories here and there, but they're not reporting on it. But then when Jimmy Kimmel gets suspended for a few days, they're running around saying this is the worst thing they've ever seen. Democracy is in peril, and now with Comey getting indicted, they're like, Trump's wielding the power of a dictator to go after his opponents. And I'm like, did you all forget that all of the indictments and Trump was put in jail or prisons, the mugshot, and like just give me a break. But that's the media, right? So the media just, I don't know how to say it nicely. People today have the ability to be a lot smarter than they ever have been due to the technology that we have. But I think that a lot of people today, I'd say the majority, don't utilize it for anything of learning or being smart. They're just scrolling Instagram all day. They're scrolling YouTube all day. They're scrolling TikTok, whatever, watching Netflix and just consuming everything. So they don't critically think. And so when you see, like I go to the gym every morning, right? And you see the headlines on the news on CNN and it'll just say, Trump this or Trump that, or, false allegations from Bobby Kennedy, misleading claims, they just run these headlines, and people, if you don't actually really pay attention or understand, they just take that all day long. So why, it goes back to the question of why would Charles say something like that we think they're stupid and they think we're evil? Well, that just comes down to the media. And, you look at who owns the media, right? I mean, we're talking about Larry Ellison. You're talking about Jeff Bezos. You're talking, they own all these outlets. Now, then you have Fox News is more right-leaning, of course, the Murdoch family, but they're one of the few. There's a lot less of them. And so when you control the narrative, you control the communication, you control this in the schools, that message, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you're constantly saying things like, just because they disagree with you, they're evil, they're racist, they're homophobic, they hate you. Well, I'm none of those things. I don't hate anybody for their skin color. I mean, that's the dumbest thing ever. Because you have different melanin in your skin, that you would be any different than me. It's such an old, ridiculous argument. And I think, and I was telling my son Jaden, when I was growing up, I don't ever remember the you're black, you're white. Like I know that it happened obviously in history, but when in the 90s, when I was growing up in the early 2000s, I don't ever remember anybody talking about that. It was like it was almost gone. And then you had Obama come, and Obama had to play the race card. Well, they didn't vote for me because I'm black. No, we didn't vote for you because we didn't like your policies. I would love to see Tim Scott from South Carolina. He would be amazing. Condoleezza Rice, loved her, big Browns fan too. It had nothing to do with your skin color, but when the media is constantly just pushing these headlines, and you can just look at them constantly, that we're these horrible people, it's no wonder that they think that we're evil. And then what are they going to do? What are you going to do when you think someone or something's evil? You want to get rid of it. So then it comes down to Charlie Kirk.
Right. What do you think, Tim?
Well, I think it's hard to classify people. There's good and evil everywhere. I used to work with Amish. Everybody thinks the Amish are perfect. They walk on water. And I ran into some pretty foul and evil people. So it really doesn't matter what religion or what political party you're in. I personally think George Soros is the face of evil. That guy knows how to capitalize off of chaos and will do anything he can to create it in any country to manipulate markets and make that money for himself. That's how he's made his fortune. As far as the left being stupid, I wouldn't say they're stupid. I'd say they're contrived. I would say they're naive, and I would say they're drama queens. And it's irritating. And at the end of the day, it's interpreted as evil, and it sounds evil.
They didn't use it on the floor of the house because they spelled it wrong. So I fixed it.
Show me your sign, right? I want to thank everybody for being here. At the end of the day, Jake and Adam, we'd like to end our podcast on a positive note. So I'm just going to go around the horn and get 10 seconds from everybody here on James Comey being indicted. I think that's something we can all have a little fun with. Adam, go ahead. What do you think about that?
What goes around comes around.
Good.
That's all I have to say on that.
Perfect. Mark?
Well, I'm glad that it happened, but I have a feeling it won't stick.
What do you think, Jake?
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Good luck.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks again, guys. Mark, Adam, Jake, it was an honor having you guys on. I think we had a great discussion. I'd invite you to come back. We love having you on. Everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us again. I hope you stay tuned. Visit our website, www.redwritesyou. If you want to get some great conservative-based merch and some fun stuff, we can do that. We have your mugs and our shirts and all that good stuff. And then we do have a new website out too, www.redwritesandYou. Pretty clever, huh? Just threw the and in there. But I enjoy you guys all being here. Until next time, stay the course, stay strong, stay patriotic. God bless everyone, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.